Hi, thank you so much for joining me. This is Sahara with a special access point short on the ubiquity of the American narrative and especially as it relates to, I was listening to something about fascism and how the word fascism is kind of everywhere, and especially in the U.S. This is solely within the context of American, that the word seems to be everywhere. However, there's a ubiquity to it that I have noticed follows some of the same patterns of other words or even movements. There is such a thing in the US that, for example, Karen, right? Like if you say something over and over again, like Karen, and make it, you memeify it, or it doesn't lessen the harm. Karen might be a lesser example, even though a Karen is definitely capable of killing, and has on a number of occasions. So it's not, I guess it's like either trivializing or reducing harm by making certain language ubiquitous. And I think there's a sinister prerogative here. And I say that to say that this trend of, let's have a meaningful movement and let's give language to a very urgent, meaningful issue. And then at the same time, let's water it down in utterance, so much so that the harm of the thing becomes less visible, and the emptiness of it, the ego of it, it's really, really fascinating because, like, linguistically, from a linguistic perspective, this is really fascinating, right? That how much it showcases the power of language. But at the same time, because the situation is dire and harmful, especially to certain groups of people over the other, I think the sinister prerogative that I'm talking about that comes into play is when we do that, empathy and the capacity for empathy lessens or deadens or gets intercepted. And I think that empathy is not a flowery luxury item. I argue that empathy is life. That if the mother did not have empathy, the father did not have empathy, they wouldn't want. You need empathy in order to raise a child. Are there a lot of children who are not raised with empathy? Of course. But fundamentally, to take care of something is to care for it, right? So from that logic alone, when you take empathy out of the equation, you are fragmenting a very much agreed upon social contract since humans have come into this earth. And I say that because I reflect on how the richest man, or at least one of the richest men, there's so many of them these days, reflecting on how he once said that empathy is, he just said that empathy was that it was a negative. And I find that so fascinating, that someone who has more than they could ever need on this earth and in this lifetime and several other lifetimes, should they wish, or if they had the opportunity, someone who has everything that they could possibly need, what do they get out of telling others to not care for each other? Or to, like, not care at all? Well, to me, it is a straight shot into some sort of fascist order. At the very least, an oppressive, highly, highly oppressive, repressive culture that only those who are already wealthy and free are liberated, and everyone else is on the bottom of the totem pole and just has to be sheep. And without empathy, compromise is not even on the table. So what empathy does in this scenario and how it works is empathy builds connection. When you care for your neighbor, even from a very small kind of care, like you don't want them to die. That doesn't mean that you are invested in whether or not they live or die, but no, I would not like my neighbor to fall on hard times. I wouldn't like my neighbor to get very sick and have to deal with bills that they cannot afford, or have something happen to their home. That's just basic level of care. And in lots of ways, it also shows your relationship, which is an essential thing to human beings, being a human being. But also, it builds connection. If I care whether or not you live or die, that builds connection. The more we're around each other, the more we get familiar with each other and our lives, and our routines kind of blend. You start to care even more. And that care turns into connection. That connection turns into a social safety net. And once that social safety net is mobilized in a unified, agreed upon way, that can be a legitimate antidote and even plan to fight oppression and get to the goal of liberation, collective liberation. So what I'm saying is the way that this works, right? You take empathy out of the equation, there's really no incentive. What's more incentive is to get folks who are hungry and getting deprived. It is more advantageous for those folks to fight within their in-groups, respective in-groups, and then those in-groups come together to fight. That is more advantageous for the powers that be that wish to sow this division and make empathy the enemy and get rid of the oldest social insurance that we know, which is mutual aid. mutual care. And it breeds apathy. But what it also does, it's lonely, it's isolating, it's not sustainable. It can cause mental anguish. And the tragic irony in all of this, I think, is that we're not alone. If you are an American and you are witnessing what is happening and being affected by what is happening right now, you are not alone. If you are in pain, if you are in anguish, if you are in precarity, if you are in unemployment, if you are in illness, if you are in chaos, you are not alone. There are millions of Americans that are feeling what you are feeling. They may be speaking it in a different language. They may be saying their prayers while you write down your hopes and dreams. They may be calling upon many spiritual sources in different languages. And they might be imagining a more spacious, liberated future that is probably similar to the one that you may be imagining, in the sense that it is one that is asking for safety, humanity, a way out of the precarity, an end to the genocides and the economic stratification and the taking civilians hostage, whether that is literally hostage or economically hostage, or just sabotaging their future because of political aspiration. So when you hear apathy or empathy, lack of empathy dressed up as apathy, or the benign, oh, it doesn't matter, or that Netanyahu is just stubborn. Oh, the UAE, they're just like, they've always been like this, or they're just rich. They only care about money. What are the other ones? Oh, these are just these people, these leaders are just war profiteers or puppets. Well, they're very dangerous puppets and profiteers with very real consequences, very real death tolls behind them, very real circumstances that whole peoples have had to navigate because of their stubbornness or profiteering. It's reductive. It's reductive. And when these words become reductive, they become ubiquitous. And when they become ubiquitous, we eat each other whole. And we reiterate the process. While those that we voted for get rich and fat over our suffering. The road to liberation has many, many access points. It is the reason why I titled this project Access Point. So many perspectives have the power to teach us and affect us. And coming together is not some little cute, trendy, kumbaya imperative. It's actually a sound, organized, effortful endeavor. And the success of its execution I would say would rely on the cumulative, well-communicated messaging of many different people coming together because they share a common goal. And that common goal is mutually beneficial. Which is something that a billionaire can never guarantee you. Thank you. Thank you for listening.